Hi, this is Cristina Dam, and this is Liberate the Podcast, where we educate, motivate, inspire, and liberate your consciousness. From spirituality, holistic healing, to creativity and conscious business, we've got your mind, body, and spirit covered. Hi there! Welcome to another episode of Liberate the Podcast. Today, we get to bring in a facilitator that has been doing transformational work. You know, she really looks at that we're already complete, whole, and perfect just as we are. And so that she's just kind of helping people remind them of that. And this is, you know, one of my dear friends and members of the space here at Liberate, her teacher too, and she's been working with her for a number of years, and so I'm really excited because I get to know Sabrina for pretty much like the first time here as you're getting to know her. So this is Sabrina Heartsong.
Hello.
And hi.
Hi.
And today we get to talk about manifesting with ease, but also getting to know Sabrina. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be here.
I'm glad to have you.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was looking through, you know, a couple of, you know, we do some things like we talk about, like we shares a little bit of talking points or things to look at. And one of the things that really stood out to me was looking at the ego versus, you know, just allowing that conscious flow of manifesting. And so when is it, you know, kind of the comparison of that. And so I want to start with that a little bit.
Just jump right in.
I do, because I was at, you know, I think that, you know, I want to start there and see where we go from there.
Yeah, good. So this is, you know, to me in the world of manifestation, this is an important distinction, you know, ego versus source consciousness.
Source consciousness, yeah.
So like, and basically what that means is, you know, it helps us contextualize where we're coming from. You know, what the intention is, which in my work, you know, I believe that's the most important thing to establish and get clear on when someone wants to manifest.
Okay.
So, you know, every single one of us has a desire to feel a certain way about ourselves. And we want what we want because of the way we think it's going to make us feel, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important when we're manifesting, when we set an intention, that we're creating an intention that allows us to feel that way about ourselves, you know? And so when we are creating this intention, it's important to take a step to really create that intention from love, as distinct than, you know, as opposed to creating it from fear. So when I'm manifesting from ego, for example, you know, ego wants what it wants. It wants something outside of itself in order to make it feel fulfilled or whole or complete. Its tendency is to externalize its need for love or approval or success or all of these things. And it basically says, I want something from out here to fill me up inside.
Yeah.
And source consciousness, when we come from source, when we come from love and not fear, we are basically tuning into that which we already are. So we are accepting that I already am this. I already am that which I'm wanting to experience more of in my life. And therefore, manifestation doesn't become, is not about getting something from outside to fill me up. It's about simply amplifying that which is already whole, perfect, and complete within me.
Beautiful.
So amplification is different than, you know, wanting something.
Yeah.
I want something to be made manifest now. Like I want the evidence of something in my life. As I said, most people want what they want because of the way they think it's going to make them feel. Right?
Yeah, instead of knowing that they are.
Right.
And so that brings me into, when did you start this journey of like teaching this and really understanding this to this level?
That's a great question. Long time ago.
Okay. I mean, what's it like, you know, I mean, we all have our stories that get us to a certain point. But I mean, that's a pretty, I like the fact that I dove into, you know, that type of question right away, because that allowed me to understand exactly like, you know, that higher level of perspective and that depth of understanding of, you know, we already are what we seek. Right? Yeah. And the fact that, you know, having that energy and knowing that and understanding that it's such the core principle. Like, I'm just curious of how you came to not only intellectualize that, but actually feel it. Because I can tell when you're sharing, you really know, feel, and believe it.
Yeah. Good. Thanks. Thank you. So, my journey started about over 20 years ago. I was in the corporate world, and I was, very much in the world of ego. And, I had accomplished some good things. I mean, I had some success. I had a good career and money and all those things that people, that we think that we need in order to feel fulfilled. Right.
Yeah.
And I hit an emotional bottom in my life. I was very unhappy with myself. I was very closed off. I was extremely isolated and just sad, and I had, always a curiosity and knowledge about, spiritual work and inner work. And so for a while I had sort of a foot in two worlds. I had a foot in like the mundane world and a foot in more esoteric, spiritual practices and so on. And it wasn't really until, like I said, I hit this emotional bottom and I took responsibility for the quality of my state, and started to do some inner work. Where I really began to feel, not just think about or read about, because there's a lot of books out there and, programs and modalities and so on. But it's really important to I think, with all of this great information available, to experience, whatever it is that we're feeling, right? So when I started to do my own inner work and just started to heal a lot of the patterns in my own life, I had some really wonderful experiences, where I got to really, I guess the word is download, a lot of this information and experience it, directly and see it for myself, like in a really palpable way.
Okay. So how long into that journey after that emotional bottom and diving more into the cause of your life and realizing and taking that responsibility, did you quit?
Well, you know what? It kind of quit me. It was a simultaneous thing, because I really, I had so many like transformational experiences, that I believe I had called in for myself, that I really couldn't. I had lost my edge. Like I couldn't work. I couldn't, do the type of work that I was doing anymore. It was really, it was just something that I just couldn't participate in anymore. It was so clear to me that my role in that world was over, and so I just started. I took a couple of years off, and just meditated and hung out in nature and did what I loved and followed my joy, and eventually I started to work with people one-on-one. I just started having conversations about what my experience was, and I felt very moved and called to help facilitate this experience, what I had been experiencing, for other people, and so I started doing that. And I've been doing it ever since.
When did you know that you wanted to, or you felt the need to share with others?
Yeah, it was really, I mean, when one has a very profound experience of self, it's very liberating. Right?
Yeah.
And as you know, and when you have that experience, you just kind of want to shout it from the mountaintops, you just want to tell everybody, because it's just like amazing and it's this wonderful thing. And so I felt very compelled to share it.
And especially when it sounds like you went from such a swing,
right?
Like a pendulum swing, right?
Yeah,
it's like you were sacrificing yourself and hiding from your true self.
Yes.
And the compromise was so great that when you allowed yourself to experience and feel, it was such a different state.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's true for everybody. I think people in the world that are, participating in ego, I mean, we're all human. And so we all have, our journey in the, in that consciousness and becoming aware of that consciousness. I think the contrast is huge, once you start to, as we participate in ego and live in our daily lives, as humans, we're always engaging in acts of self-betrayal without being aware of it, and not understanding the impact that has on our emotional well-being, on our psychological well-being, and our physical well-being as well, right?
Yeah.
And so, we step out of alignment. And so as we begin this journey to like really get into alignment and, start to honor oneself, as you said, it starts to come together and starts to flow, and we're able to experience that flow. And I think for all of us, even just a brief moment of experiencing that flow sort of, changes the tide, and redirects us, hopefully, in a sustainable way on a more spiritual path.
Yeah, because there's no denying when people have those, even if they're a moment, a few days, or whatever that time frame is, where they just realize that everything just worked.
Yeah.
right? And so effortlessly, so easy, and so joyously that it makes people second guess a lot of different things, and then wonder about, is there more to life or the world, right? If they don't have a big spiritual base, but they're like, this is more than coincidence, and
everybody has that longing. Like these are the deep questions that we work with: is who am I and why am I here? That's what everybody wants to know, Since
the beginning of time.
Right, exactly, exactly. And everyone has that longing, and some people don't have a context for it, or they can't name it, or they can't exactly pinpoint what it is that they're looking for, but they know that there's something more. They know there's something more. And just like you said, each of us has the experience of, we're talking about manifesting. Each of us has the experience of manifesting. Like everyone's had a flow moment, where you realize, like, wow, this is what I intended. This is what I wanted with my whole soul, and I thought about it, and here it is. Yeah. We've all had those flow moments, and that's, those are moments of alignment, right? Yeah. When we're in integrity with not only what we love and what we want, but how we behave and how we speak, and all those things fall into place.
And do you think that it's imperative that people get to a state of alignment with their self before they start the manifestation process?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I think we are always manifesting all the time. We're just energetic beings.
But I mean the intention of the manifestation. Because I mean, if we're looking at the two distinctions of manifestation, right?
Yes.
And if we're not in alignment, I would think that we couldn't help but to be manifesting from an ego space.
Of course.
Or a block space.
Of course. Well, I mean, okay, so if we consider that 95% of what we're manifesting comes from the subconscious, right? And so, unless we're aware of what's happening for us on a subconscious level, we understand our patterns, we look, we do the childhood work, and we understand some of the wounds that are there, the limiting beliefs and so on, then, realistically, what we're creating, what we are replaying over and over again is what's in the subconscious, right? And so until we have access to it and we can nurture those beliefs and help repair some of those beliefs, repair the any negative impact from childhood, and start implementing more positive reinforcements, then we can bring the subconscious into alignment with what we consciously desire. Right?
And how do you recommend that people start that process?
Well, willingness is a good place to start. Well, just being willing, is a really good place to start. In the work that I do, in the programs that I teach, I start with childhood. Early childhood conditioning, resentments. That is really, to me, the first, the beginning of the separation from self. Is feeling resentful, and all of these, what happens to us in early childhood as we start to experience ourselves as limited and unwanted or unloved or unworthy, and all the depending on the messaging we got. Every human has some variation of this, regardless of their childhood. And so just going back into that phase with a guide. Even if you don't remember your childhood fully, patterns are patterns, right? So it doesn't really matter where you start on the timeline. We can just start to look at some of the felt experience from that era and observe what's happening for us on a subconscious level, and then we become aware of it. And when we have the context for, okay, this is what is going on for me subconsciously, now I can connect the dots and see how this is happening in my life. I see the evidence of these beliefs or the evidence of this conditioning being played out over and over again, and now there's an opportunity for the awareness to shift those beliefs, and when you shift the beliefs, the circumstances change.
Of course, because then our unconscious is a different program, right? So we're acting out something else.
Exactly.
I always like to say to people when they're looking at something that they're triggered on and looking at that pattern, is asking themselves, what am I making this mean about me? Right. And if you keep on going, you get to that, I'm unwanted, I'm unworthy, I'm not important, no one loves me, whatever that is, one of those little phrases that you might have said to yourself. Yeah. Now, you do classes too, right?
Yeah.
And so in this, you take people through some of these processes, or?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. All the work I do is experiential, In the one-on-one work, obviously, we process, we do a deep dive because it's an intimate space and it's just the two of us. In a workshop setting, it can also be very intimate, My experience is, birds of a feather flock together. So everyone that's attending the workshop at that time is usually dealing with some similar patterning or some similar, if there's one person in the room that's processing something out loud, it's usually benefiting everyone else as well.
Of course.
And so I teach some processes to help, like I sort of guide, people into their emotions and into the felt experience so that they can process fully and shift. It's one thing to become aware of the belief. I mean, anyone can read books about limiting beliefs or create a list of affirmations. It's very important to tap into the emotion that is keeping that belief in place, right? Because I have a felt experience, and then I have a belief about that felt experience, and that it reinforces the emotion, and that reinforces the belief, which reinforces the emotion, and now we have a pattern.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it becomes stronger and stronger
Exactly.
and stronger, and the stronger it is, the harder that,
right.
like, if that weed grows really deep, you pull it out, and sometimes you don't get the whole, root. But if it's not that deep, you can pull it out easy, like if the little weed starts to grow in the flower bed, bing!
Right. Yeah.
But if it's embedded there, you got to be really careful on how you grab it.
Right. Like I said, it's helpful to have a guide for sure, because it can be, people are, I think in my humble experience of working with others, I think that people are afraid to feel in general. They're afraid to go into the emotions of it. There isn't, maybe there's a belief that this is never going to stop, or if I go there, I'll never stop crying, or it'll be so painful, or I don't want to re-experience the pain of my childhood, whatever it was. I think it's really important to have a guide and to be in a loving container to go into these experiences responsibly, so that we can really feel our feelings and let it out and release them, because as we were talking about this, the cycle of belief and emotion, it creates a pattern, and then before we know it, we see the evidence of this belief in our lives, and then it becomes unanimous, and then we're stuck in this paradigm where this is just the way life is for me, right? Which is not true for anybody.
Yeah. Because we can change anything.
Exactly. But there needs to be an awareness that the possibility of shifting this is available to me, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of people, unfortunately, maybe they don't think it's possible, or they don't think it's accessible to them, So hopefully, the work that we're doing is giving access to as many people as possible, the opportunity to shift and to see that, there is a different way of viewing life, or a different way of experiencing life.
And, something that came up when you were talking was this idea of people so afraid to share their emotions, right?
Yeah.
Or feel their emotions, or even experience them at some level. Do you think, or is it your experience, that people have a more difficult time in today's day and age than even like a decade ago? Because I'm just, I feel that people are so, at least when I look around in society, and I don't know if this is so I'm literally just question came to my mind and exploring it with you, but there's all of this constant stimuli that it's going on, and now with social media and information at the fingertips, and people are Googling, it's like the average person goes to sleep with their phone and they wake up with their phone, and at any given moment, I mean, I see people even walking into the bathroom with their phone in their hand, and so like, there's so much going on that because of the outside distractions, I just wonder if you feel or have any opinion on whether that is keeping people from feeling their emotions more, or if it doesn't have an effect on it.
Oh, I think it totally has an effect. I think it really does. I mean, the outside, the degree of stimulation that we are subjected to throughout the day in this digital age definitely takes us out of ourselves. I also feel, in my humble opinion, I also feel social media is a vehicle to, it allows people to externalize their need for approval and acceptance, and there's that longing that gets created, like there's attachment to how you're being viewed, or how you're being seen, or how popular you are, and so on. And so, but I think that these externalizations have existed forever, since the beginning of humanity. And so, in this modern era, we've just found this way. There's this new, sophisticated way to experience the same disconnection from self.
Yeah.
And so it definitely has an effect for sure. There's a lot going on, as you say, and when I work with people, the first thing we do is create space. The first thing we do is slow down, look at, all the things that we're doing all the time, and how many of those things are really necessary, how much of that stuff is actually bringing you joy,
Yeah.
you know, and taking you out of yourself, you know, and so looking at really assessing that, and learning to go inward, you know, which means putting your phone down and meditating, or, you know, doing some diaphragmatic breathing, spending time in nature, all things that are helping us get connected to self, definitely. So
you'd say that the first thing that you really help people do is connect them to their self.
yes.
And then it's taking that self and realizing what is in their heart space to manifest.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Because once people have, you know, and this is, you know, the sort of the map that I've outlined in the curriculums that I teach is, you know, we do the inner child work, the healing work, you know, understanding the subconscious, you know, closing those wounds, moving into a more integrated and holistic experience of self. Once I've realized myself and the possibility, the potential within me, then I can take this new, you know, self-loving, self-improved, you know, relationship with self, and I can direct it into the world from a place of love, from a place of I already am this, with the intention to amplify that which I already am, and create amazing things. I can create extensions of myself in the world that I can now share with others, right? See, when I manifest from ego, which was your original question, you know, ego is very self-centered, self-serving, and selfish. You know, it's about me. I want this for myself, you know? And when we manifest from source, it's really a selfless act. It's, you know, we're coming from, you know, this place of love that really wants to be of selfless service to all beings everywhere, right? And that's the beauty of it. And that's how it makes it so much more rewarding and, you know, and so much more sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. And easier, I would think. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we got to do the ego work first, though, which is tempting, right?
Oh, you know, that's
tempting. It's tempting, right?
Of course,
so,
but you know, I always say to people that when you do something for another person, you get out of your own way, right? If your friend is in need and you wouldn't normally feel comfortable making a scene in public or doing something, but if somebody falls over and they're choking or they need something or they need to be rushed to the ambulance, you don't care about how you look, what you do with that, and you can move mountains. It's like the same thing of like a mother being able to pick up a car, and like the energy, the force, the willpower, and, you know, all of that. It just pops out and it becomes like, I got to do this, and people can do that, move mountains, right?
Yes.
Literally.
When they are emotionally connected to what is happening, people can move mountains.
Yeah. And manifest whatever, you know, these bigger things beyond what they could ever imagine or even, you know, possibly ever even think, right? You know, and so with that, like if we go back, I want to hear about a couple of people that you've, since the topic for this being manifestation, you know, some of the things that you've manifested for yourself and that you've been that facilitator to help others manifest for their self.
Sure. Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just having a deep and profound experience of my nature, my essential nature. You know, I think that is the purest intention to hold for someone who is, you know, at the beginning of their journey, you know, is to really experience the profound nature of themselves, experiencing them as, you know, themselves as whole and complete, as you said in the introduction, you know, and really, you know, cultivating that presence. You know, I think that would be the first and the purest intention to hold as far as manifesting is concerned, you know. And for me in my life, you know, when I have moments when I'm not in alignment, because I'm a human, but when I am in alignment and I you know, I'm tapped into, you know, the power that I know is flowing through me, you know, the power of the universe and source, I direct that energy with love and intention, and like as I mentioned earlier, an intention to serve and to amplify. I've seen amazing things in my life. I mean, I manifested my entire career, you know, as a facilitator. You know, I went from corporate to, you know, with a couple of years in the dark, you know, and then, you know, it was funny.
Or in the light,
yeah,
exactly,
exactly. Yeah, thank you. That's really, really good. And then, you know, now, and then I just emerged as this facilitator, and I you know, I don't do a lot of marketing or PR or anything like that. Like I don't don't do, a lot of stuff to expose my business, for example. I became a mom 2.5 years ago. And
Congratulations.
So, thank you. And so I sort of took a real step back, and I just was focusing on being a full-time mom, but I still worked,
Yeah.
And I literally just I set my intention to be of service, and I open, my heart up to that channel, and I practice my meditation, and I do my affirmations and the work that I teach others, and people find me,
Yeah.
I'm always so blessed to work with so many people, and to always have an abundance of clients, and that want the work, or that want transformation, and that are ready to move their lives into the next phase of this evolution, and it's just wonderful. It's wonderful to be able to do that with ease. To have a fundamental belief that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm always provided for, and everything's perfect, and I'm always serving the people that I need to serve in the moment that I need to serve them. It creates such a state of peace. In my day-to-day life, and that's what I try to help. That's what I try to help cultivate for others. Is really just giving them access to what they really desire. I think so many of us have a fundamental desire for our lives. And the first thing that happens when we feel something, that we want something, is, how do I do this? Or how is it going to happen? Or how can I make this happen? Or is this possible for me? And the moment we ask how, we are knocked into our conditioned perspective, the conditioned perspective being the ego mind.
And the fear comes rampant in,
Right.
And then they think when the how comes in, then the how not comes in, and
Exactly.
what if it doesn't happen? And then there's paralyzing.
Exactly. So how, that question how, as soon as the mind goes there, this is a good clue, I'm an ego, right? I'm an ego consciousness. As soon as I start to ask how, now I'm in my ego, I'm operating from fear, and I'm starting to cultivate doubt, which will take me out of flow,
Yeah, because you're not trusting.
Right.
Because you don't need to know how. If you just trust, if you're driving down the street and you're not sure where you're going to go, but there's bound to be a gas station that pops up, or there's bound to be a restaurant, or whatever you're looking for, you just go, right?
Yeah.
But the moment that you stop that, I like that. I like that distinction. I never heard of it quite like that before.
Yeah.
But it makes completely sense.
Yeah,
The moment that you say how.
Yeah, exactly. And so, when we do that, because as human beings, we all do that. Okay, well, how am I going to do this? Or how am I going to get there? Or how is this going to happen? And we start to engage the mind and start to strategize and plan. And, we're taken out of the process, And so just to remind ourselves, that's a great moment to stop and breathe and just trust and surrender and say, this is my intention. This is how I want to feel. This is what I'm putting out there, and I trust that the how is the realm of the universe. I know it's going to come to me. And the key is not to think about, people say, I have to figure this out, or I have to plan this, or do. The key is not to try and trying to understand things with your mind. It's really about learning to, go inward and cultivate that presence and that way of feeling that you want to feel in your life. And then in those moments, allowing inspiration to inform the next action. So, versus thinking about what to do, we allow our intuition or divine guidance, however you want to phrase it, to inspire what the next action would be. And so it's not like you don't do anything when you're manifesting with ease.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question,
Right.
because, a lot of it is sometimes, those plans or those thought out things, so that you're prepared for certain things, right?
Yes.
Because that's where some people, I'm sure, would go, and I know it's where my mind was going, well, but, you want to make sure that you're planning for these things, or that you have, a form, like if like for instance, if I was thinking about how we're going to record this podcast, then I'm like, okay, well, I need to make sure that I have, this recording device and this camera and the right?
Yeah.
So where is the distinction of how, some of the systematic things are, when people are finding themselves saying, okay, but how is that going to happen? Where is that distinction of some of the mechanical things that we might need to organize in order to create, versus when it comes from ego versus source?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Even the mechanics of it can be divinely inspired. even the mechanics of it. If you, for example, you're doing this podcast tonight and you set an intention, you're very thoughtful about, the recording of this podcast, and you set an intention that everything is going to be in its right place. It's going to feel fantastic. It's going to flow easy. Everything's going to be recorded perfectly. We're going to have a flawless conversation. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a great time. You set an intention and it feels really good, right? And you're holding the energy of that intention. In that moment, there'll be the inspiration to make sure that you've checked your mic and you have your right equipment, and you'll have your, the how of it will start to present itself to you. It's always being revealed, even the mechanical stuff, in those moments, whatever the next action is to take.
Gotcha.
There are things we do mindlessly, like grocery shopping or driving, or sometimes, like there are things we do on autopilot, getting to one place from one place to another. But when we live intentionally, which is part of what's being taught in the workshop, everything becomes an intention. Everything becomes, okay, there's a desire to create this, or there's a desire to experience that, so let me create an intention around it.
Yeah.
Let me create an intention around this. And it could be, from the smallest thing to the most, to the largest creation of whatever your heart is inspired to see in the world.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, you teach a few different classes.
Yes.
We have the, privilege of having you, next month, which, depending on when you listen to this, I'm sure we'll have her a couple different times. The topic of manifesting with ease,
Yes.
But what are some of the other workshops that you teach?
So I teach a program called Achieving Inner Peace, which is a self-realization program, and it teaches people how to deal with uncomfortable emotions, how to deal with traumatic events from childhood, and the I want to say the effects that those traumatic events have had. It helps people understand their ego and delve into their subconscious and move into a more peaceful way of being with oneself and everyone else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my main focuses: is self-realization work and the manifestation work, the flow work,
Gotcha.
which is about self-expression and really fulfilling what we feel is our potential. I have an interesting theory on life purpose stuff. A lot of people ask me that question. Like, how do you how do you find out your life purpose and so on? And for me, our purpose is all the same. Everyone has, our purpose is always to realize ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we do with that awareness is really just depending on our heart's desire to serve. Whatever brings you joy. So I do some work around that particular topic as well. And for those that are inclined, that really feel called to, I have a program for people that want to facilitate for others,
mm-hmm.
and want to develop their own curriculum or their own self-expression of that, how they can facilitate this self-awareness, because we're all just here to wake each other up, in our own way, right? So
absolutely, everybody's their own mirror for everybody else, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Well, where can people find you?
They can find me at sabrinaheartsong.com.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had to leave everybody with one thing, what would you leave them with?
I would leave them with, just the intent, to set an intention to really honor yourself where you are.
Mm-hmm.
I think the beginning of this work and what sustains us through the ups and downs of our spiritual journey is just the willingness to love and accept ourselves exactly where we are. Moving into a state of non-resistance with self and acceptance with self really helps things pass, and it helps us grow, and it helps us recontextualize, the challenges that we might be facing in life, and to see things from a more loving perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, and until next time.
If you enjoyed this conversation, like it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. If you want some more amazing resources on your path of liberation, head over to liberateyourself.com and sign up for our mailing list. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram at Liberate Hollywood, all one word, or Liberate Emporium, all one word. Until next time, liberate yourself.